I'm just curious for the people that are here, are you,
There you go.
my job. Um, are you interested in making a proposal, I guess, or? Yeah, okay.
Well, I have to say, I'm very excited about the number of people who responded to the call for the workshop, because that certainly indicates an enthusiasm for potentially more proposals to come through this year. So,
Yeah.
Great.
I'm actually not going to do a proposal this year, but I thought it would be a good idea to come anyway for the following year.
Great. Again, Dale, that's wonderful. And you've had experience too, so you may be able to add some, insight here as we go along. If there's something that comes up that you're like, well, actually, so we'll see how this goes. What time is it? It's 4:03. Let's give people a couple more minutes, because we definitely.
And I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Hi,
I'm
John.
Jonathan Wilson, and I'm in south of Gloucester right now. I'm in but normally in the summer I'm in Gloucester. I'm a member of RNAC.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in all the guidelines and what's sort of in your head in terms of what works for the Cove and for proposals. And I have other people, artists, friends that are somewhat interested. So I thought it'd be worth my time to mostly listen, and I might have a question or two. So
Great.
thank you very much for doing this.
We're happy to do it. Yeah, I'm glad. Let's see, what time is it? Yeah, let's give people one more minute and then we'll get started, and then we'll,
Sure.
people will join us, I guess.
And I'm still fussing around with figuring Zoom out, but and I might unmute myself, and I might even whoops, I even lost the screen. I might not show myself, whatever, but I'm here, I'm listening.
Okay, great.
And if I can figure out how to chat or ask a question, I'll fire away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Welcome, Nislin. Is it Nislin or Nislin? I guess you're on mute, so I can't. Don't know if you can answer me. But.
Will you be muting us, Ginger?
I won't mute you. You can mute yourselves if you prefer. And, we will, I'll start in just a moment and kind of give you the ground rules so that we can sort of all be on the same page here. Let's see. Yeah, let's get started for real. So I'm going to actually share my screen. I'm going to pull up the agenda and we can just talk through it real quick. Let's see. Okay. All right. Can everyone see this agenda now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So just to remind everyone, Zoom is being recorded so that if people can't, attend now, they could potentially watch this again and get the information later. So if you prefer not to be on screen, you can just turn your camera off. And again, you can mute yourselves. I think what we really hope to do is have the questions come through in the chat, only because there are a good number of us. There's a lot of material to cover. And if you can, I know it's hard because our brains fire at whatever rate they fire. But if you can try to target your question to the part of the agenda that we're on, so that we can kind of move through the material methodically, that would be great. But if you can't, we'll just try to keep track of what people are asking and answer those questions when the topic comes up, if that makes sense to people generally. Okay. So, the plan is basically I'll introduce myself briefly here and Cynthia. We're going to go actually kind of step by step through the call for proposals, and some of it's very straightforward. And And then, but as we're going along, if you have questions about any of these steps, please, you know, either throw it into the chat or you can wave your arms, or speak a little bit so that you'll come up on screen and we can answer your question. And then we'll get through the whole call for proposals. We're going to really briefly each talk about what happens on the jury end. You know, what is the process that is undertaken and how are decisions made? What kinds of factors beyond the proposal themselves? Sometimes they're part of the decision-making process, because often a proposal that doesn't get accepted is not necessarily because it's not a great proposal. You know, there are other factors. So we'll talk about some of those and then obviously open it up to more questions related to that or to anything towards the end here. And I'm going to try to keep some good timing so that we don't run out of it. All right, so I am Ginger Myhaver. I'm the program director at Rocky Neck Art Colony. I'm also a member of the exhibitions committee, and I'm kind of the key point person for the Cove Gallery as well. And right now there is not a Cove Gallery committee. So each year there's a new jury that gets assembled, and that generally is assembled of people that have formerly been in the Cove Gallery as exhibitioners, others gallerists from around town who might not, you know, that aren't interested in showing their work there, but have a great eye, and people we know. And there's usually at least one member of the board of directors of Rocky Neck. And I serve as a kind of non-voting but informational member of the committee or the jury, so that I can fill in information for people, you know, whether it's related to, okay, well, this is what's going on at the cultural center during that time slot, you know, should we consider that while we're thinking about the show? Or, you know, just sort of knowing things about the organization as a whole, or about the members, or maybe I know something a little more about someone's work that isn't there visibly on the page. I can bring that information. So that's kind of my role, both in terms of the Cove Gallery and the Cove Gallery jury, and then Cynthia, and then I'm also, as I said, on the exhibitions committee, and on that committee I actually do take part in the jurying process. But Cynthia, let's why don't you tell us about you a little bit?
Oh, I'm on the board of trustees at Rocky Neck, and I'm the chair of the exhibitions committee. In terms of proposals, they're an ongoing process. We welcome them at any time, though, you know, coming in early doesn't necessarily give you any up. And then we start our next season programming usually in the summer, as early as possible, and proposals work into that decision making. Usually we'll come up with a slate of shows just by brainstorming ideas that consists of all different, you know, varieties of shows, juried shows, member shows, so on. And we will, if we had more than one, you know, really great proposal, we would consider having two in the season, but probably not more than two. What else could I say? We like the proposals to fit into the season. So if you propose something that you know, is really too close to another show that happens to be in the process of being created, it's not that the proposal's not good, it's just that it doesn't fit into that particular season. But we'd keep those proposals in mind for a next season, if possible. And we vote, you know, everybody has a equal vote, and whoever, you know, whatever proposal gets the most votes gets chosen. Simple as that. after a lot of discussion.
Yeah, there's a lot of definitely sometimes even heated debate. But,
Yes. I'd say there's-
so just to say, and that's just, we can kind of return to the subject at the end, but that we that none of these decisions are made easily or lightly, or that every single proposal is considered very carefully and with as much objective consideration as possible. And obviously, it's always a subjective process as well. It's just the nature of the beast. But so what I'm going to do now is share my screen again, and we're going to look at the Cove Gallery. We're going to focus right now on Cove Gallery proposal, since that's the one that's coming up next. And because the Cultural Center exhibitions proposals are very similar. I mean, the outline is almost the same in terms of how you apply. So we'll just go through this. But if there's any particulars that are more relevant to the exhibitions at the Cultural Center that come up along the way, we can speak to that more directly. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Okay, so you've probably all taken a look at this online or in the documents that we sent to you today. So we're, just to be clear, this year in 2024, we're going to be jurying in 5 shows that begin at the 3rd week of May and run through the 1st week in October. So each of the shows will be 4 weeks long. We are actually adding another show this year in the early spring, so late April into the 3rd week, or almost to the 3rd week of May, which is being organized by the folks who do weekly life drawing here at RNAC in the Cultural Center. And they're just forming their own show. And Janice Brand, who's the president of the board of directors, is leading that initiative. But it's happening partly because our experience has been that early May shows for those who are proposing and preparing and paying essentially to make a show isn't the best time slot. So we thought, let's fill that time slot with something that somebody has the initiative to take on and make happen. But so the first show will actually begin Memorial Day weekend, which we think is a pretty great, launch to the season, and should be a great spot for the first show, really. And, it's the initiation into summer. So I want to just take us through, quickly through the benefits, the requirements. And as we go through these, as I said before, if you want to throw a question into the chat, by all means do so, and I'll slow down and we can, redirect to your question. So obviously this is just one of 3 galleries that the Rocky Neck Art Colony has under its umbrella. It's a beautiful space. If anyone hasn't been in there, it's a gorgeously lit and spacious, and really it's a space that accommodates, I think, almost any kind of medium, even video. And not that there hasn't been much, but there has been a couple of people over the last few years have actually put in some video, and obviously 3D work fits really well in the space and all that. So it's a lovely space, and it's got high visibility. This year in particular, there were, the last 2 years really, the sales out of Cove Gallery have been really great. So it's a great opportunity to sell your art as well as to get it seen by a lot of people walking by, seeking it out specifically. So participating, so the general requirements: participating artists are responsible for all of the gallery sitting. And that is a high, it's a demand that I unfortunately can count some people out, because it's a lot of time. So therefore we strongly advise 4 to 6 artists at least to be a part of a show. And I'll talk more later about sort of how you might go about it if you don't have that many people and you don't want to do it that way. We say paid gallery sitters may be available. This is really very, like, if we happen to have some people who are interested in doing that, we're happy to send them your way. But we don't have currently a big stall or, a stable of people who are doing this for us here at the Cultural Center or elsewhere. But we're certainly willing to try to help if if something like that comes up, but really the plan is to make, to make plans to cover the time. And the gallery is open a lot. It's open Sunday and Mondays from noon to 5. The optional hours are on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's at your discretion. Thursdays through Saturdays, the gallery is open from noon to 7 p.m. We have a little bit of flexibility late in the fall and maybe even in those early summer weeks, but that would really have to be worked out with us, basically me, the board of directors, and Tony Blackman, the director. The show dates always include 2 days for hanging the show at the beginning and 2 days for removal of the work and repairing the walls and putting the gallery back into the state in which you received it. So artists move in at 2:30 on Tuesday afternoons. They have so it's almost 2 full days. It's till noon on Thursday when you would open the gallery to the public. And then at the end of the show, after your 5 p.m. close on Sunday, you'd have until 2 p.m. on Tuesday. And that so far has not been a problem, I think, for anyone that I know of yet. We have a couple of questions, so I'm going to stop and take a look.
Yeah, okay, you can see them, yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if I can see them. 1 sec. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just take a quick look here. Okay. Oh, so sorry. This is going back a little bit. Jennifer asked about how many people vote. So right now the exhibition committee has 7 members, active members. So that
8.
Oh, 8, sorry. 8 active members. So that's how many people vote for the exhibitions at the Cultural Center. And I'm right now working on assembling this year's Cove Gallery jury, but it's somewhere, it's either 5 or 7, so that it's an uneven number. So that's where that comes in. And then, and then Dale's asking, why can't we open earlier? Oh, you mean in the year? Dale, is that?
No, 11 o'clock in the morning, she asked.
Oh, well, that is actually an option. I mean, and actually this year, one of the shows, I don't remember if this was yours or not, decided that they wanted to open on Monday mornings because tourists seem to come around early on Monday and then leave town mid-afternoon. And we're fine with that. If you want to add extra hours, it's great. It's just wanting to make sure that we're consistent on the institutional end, that people know when the gallery's open, so you can certainly go beyond.
Okay, because I think I asked about that last year and the answer was no, I couldn't.
Did I
open
tell
it.
you that?
Because you wanted consistency or something. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I missed.
But it's okay. That's all right. So
Yeah.
knowing that we can open earlier is good, because I think that the morning option for tourists and people who are heading to lunch is a good
Right.
idea.
No, I think that's great. And again, sorry, maybe I misunderstood. Like, oh, can we not open these hours as often?
No.
The question I get. So
That's
anyway, so that's the answer to those 2.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. We've got a couple new. I guess that's everybody for now. Okay, so let's go back. And then, so these are some of the basic things that a proposal requires. The names, the websites or Instagram, if you don't have a website, and representational images of all the participating artists that you're proposing for a show. And this is a new requirement this year. A lot of people have done this way in the past and it's worked out well, but we're asking that all of the supporting materials for the application are gathered into one single PDF document for review by the Cove Gallery jury. It just is so much more helpful for people to be able to see all of the information in one place and not have to be shifting back and forth and finding the image that goes with that proposal. And, obviously it's a time-consuming process really to review everyone's proposal really carefully and to really think about the work and to actually be able to imagine the show as a whole. And so if everything gathered into a single document, it actually really helps in that process. It helps you in the end be reviewed well, you know, because we can really see it. So that's something we're asking. It also helps me as a person who has to compile everything and give it to the jurors that we, that everything's kind of contained. Anyway, and then once, if your proposal is accepted, all of the artists who are a part of your show will be asked to sign a contract, and the contract confirms your understanding, and everybody who are participating understands what the responsibilities are, you know, and it really is all of these things that we're talking about right here, and the contract spells it out really clearly, what your responsibilities are, what RNAC will do in the process. And then if you aren't, or members of your proposed show are not currently members of Rocky Neck Art Colony, you'll be required to become a member. And once you do, that means that your artwork will be sold. You'll get the 75% commission, or we'll get 25% commission, and you'll get 75% of the dollar amount of anything you sell. Let's see. And then again, this is just the artists are responsible for returning the gallery to the condition in which it was presented, filling holes and painting as necessary, cleaning up any debris, taking out any pieces of furniture that you might have brought in, or you know, armaments or whatever, armatures to install the work, and then that it's broom clean and the floors are, you know, kind of sponge mopped, so that the next group has a nice clean surface to work with and to install, because it is a quick turnaround, that 2 days, you know. Any programs or events that you want to schedule in conjunction with your show are very welcome, but we need to have a little bit of advance notice, at least a couple of weeks, so that the Mark Getteman, who owns the building, needs to know in advance, and his tenant who lives upstairs needs to know. So that's why, and also that allows Rocky Neck to promote your work. I mean, you know, promote the events in advance as well. We've got a couple more questions here, so let's take a look. Okay, so Barb Ennis is asking, this is a great question. So she's wondering if the exterior of the Cove will be maintained through the cultural center, window boxes, and the little garden out front. And this is a really good question. In the past, it has been the landlord and his partner who maintained the garden. And so we need to reconfirm that with him this year. We don't currently have a volunteer who is on board to, you know, do the gardening, and we don't have a staff gardener, unfortunately. But we'll work that out with them this year, because it was a little messy last year. I know that you did a lot of work yourself to clean up some dead, you know, plant life after it didn't get enough water. Dale's asking if there's a way to have participating artists sign a contract before the proposal is submitted. I always had to water. Yeah, and that's actually in the sort of the larger gallery sitting guide that you'll get your hands on when you are, if your show is installed in the gallery. You are actually asked to keep an eye on the plant life to make sure it's not, you know, dying, but it was confusing because 2 years ago, someone really maintained it all by themselves and sort of said, don't water things because we don't want them to, I have control of it. And then that person didn't really do that this year. And so there was some confusion, and I apologize that things didn't get taken care of the way they should have been. But yeah, I guess in terms of getting people to sign a contract beforehand, I would just say really be clear with all of your co-applicants for your proposal. Really know what the requirements are. So make sure that they're reading the, you know, call for proposals and what the details are, so that they know what they're getting themselves into beforehand, what they're agreeing to try to be a part of. Okay, so the costs. So basically, each group assumes the cost of running the gallery, including the installation of the work, your displays, any repairs that you might, the repairs of the space itself. We buy the paint, we buy the spackle, we try to supply the equipment you need to make those repairs. Sometimes those disappear. A group ends up bringing in their own, and then I hear about it after the fact. But by all means, Rocky Neck should be supplying that stuff. So if you're finding that you don't have spackling knives or roller pin tins or whatever, let me know. But packaging of materials for shipping of art, all of that, and even having cash on hand to make change for customers if they're paying in cash, that's all on the exhibiting artists. We supply a Square payment system, a reader, and an iPad to interface with that system. And we pay all the fees that are acquired or that are mount up through for using Square. We provide some administrative support, meaning I try to train folks to use it, and then I'm kind of on hand and on call if something's goes wrong. And then of course I'm like a liaison between yourselves and the our accountant, who is a freelance person but does a really great job of keeping track of all the payments and paying artists in a timely manner. And just checks are paid out to artists so you don't get paid every week for whatever you sold that week, but you'll get paid at the end of a given calendar month. So if your show runs from mid-June to mid-July, you sold some work at the end of June, you'll get a check at the beginning or near the beginning of July for the work you had sold. And then again, after the end of July, whatever you sold in July. So again, it's our accountant is freelance, and she tries to contain the number of hours that Rocky Neck is charged to do the work. So so she basically makes out all kinds of checks once a month. And again, 25% of the sales are paid to Rocky Neck, our colonies, or we're retained by us essentially. Artists are required to supply well-written descriptive copy and images for press releases so that we can send those out. And when about 6 weeks before a show, I try to send out everything you need that I'm going to need back from you. So a template for the press release, and the forms you need to sign, and a schedule for gallery sitting so that you and your colleagues can fill that out and that sort of stuff. But let's see, we'll do, obviously we'll put it out in the Rocky Neck newsletter, on our Facebook and Instagram pages, but also we'll take a full-on press release and send it not only to the Gloucester Times, Gloucester Daily Times, but also a number of North Shore and even Boston newspapers. They don't always pick it up, but we send them. And anyone who attended the last member meeting met Elizabeth Carey, who has recently come on board, and she's a real marketing whiz, and she's going to take the reins this summer on getting the word out about the shows at Rocky Neck. So I think we may end up getting a lot more actual press coverage in the form of articles written about shows and that sort of thing. We have high hopes, and I think she feels really optimistic that she can get some of that done. She's an old pro. Let's see, we've got a question. Somewhat complicated to write question. Okay, to ask concerns group themes and getting, sorry.
Can I ask it verbally? I know
Yes,
I
you
just
may,
didn't
of
want to write
course.
it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
I noticed, I submitted, after I joined about 2 years ago, I submitted something
Okay.
and it wasn't accepted. That's great, no problem.
Sure.
And then I noticed, because I'm new to town,
Yeah.
that the exhibits that were selected really had themes, and then usually they included about 5 or 6 people.
Mhm.
And so my question is,
Yeah.
it might be useless or not useless, it might be wiser to get together with 5 or 6 other people and then make a submission, because if I submit on my own, that's not going to go anywhere.
Mhm.
And so that's part of my question, or you can respond to that. The other part, though, is being new to the area, even though I have contacts,
Yeah.
that's just a problem for me, is knowing how to do that, so maybe you can address that a little bit. That's kind of why and I know some people that are interested, we've tossed around, why don't we, make a submission,
Right.
and then I thought, well, we need to find people maybe that might fit into a theme, because it might be the theme that would allow us to get a jury selection versus just a hodgepodge, shotgun approach of, well, look at this work. So if you can kind of address that broad question, I'd appreciate it.
Sure thing. And I'm going to address some of it in a few minutes, just because we're going to get down to like, what is it really, what's the meat of the application. Dale Blodgett had her hand up, so I feel like she has something to add here. You're muted right now, Dale.
So if you want me to wait, but okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Jonathan. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Hello.
So what I did last year was I came up with the idea, the theme first. And then I went on the RNAC website and I scrolled down and looked at every single artist's work
Whoa.
that I could see. And then I
Okay.
started putting out my proposal to the artists and trying to make sure that they could fulfill all the requirements that they needed to. And that's how I put together the show. So it's just an idea.
That's a pretty extensive list with some very talented people.
It
So
is.
that took
Yeah.
some research on your part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Good.
you, Dale, for that suggestion. And I would say, really great way to think about it. I think another way to approach it, not very differently than that, but is to kind of go through and look at what people's work is. And then maybe that will spark an idea about a theme, or even just, so again, we're almost to the part about content, but we, sometimes it's about a theme, and sometimes it's really, if you can make a good argument for like these works just really sing together aesthetically, and that's another way to approach, because it really is ultimately about the work, even though thematic proposals really do sometimes strengthen the way we can understand what you're trying to do. If you can sort of put together a proposal that's like, look at this work together, and yeah, it has to have some words around that, but that is certainly another way to go about it. And then in terms of connecting people, I've been trying to rack my brain around this because, as many of you know, though not all of you, I'm here. I wear many hats as the program director, and I work theoretically part-time. And so I always want to think of myself as this clearing, or like I can potentially connect people. And I am always like, when somebody says, oh, so-and-so and I are trying to put together a show, if you think of anyone, and if a brainstorm happens for me, I certainly let those people know. But it's really hard for me to sort of put my brain around trying to connect. But I want to think of, if anyone, so this is something we can maybe circle back to at the end here, is if anyone has some great ideas about how we could potentially connect people who are looking for other people to do a show. I'm all ears, and maybe there's some way we could, I don't know, start I don't know. Remember a list?
Very difficult.
It is, but let's all put it in our brains there, and we can I don't know, bat around some ideas maybe. And then so I'm just going to move on, and then we're going to come back around to the question of like content. So Jennifer wanted to know if RNAC ever buys ads from Cosmos. So far we have not purchase ads, although we have enjoyed incredible support from Cosmos over the years, and we love them. And I think we're trying to come up with a budget so that we can do that this year. It hasn't been confirmed yet. The board is still going over the budget for this coming year, but I think it's, many of us agree that it's a very good use of our money. So hopefully that is on the marketing agenda for this year. Let's see, I'm going to go back just quickly, see if we can get through the, I don't want to drag this on too long. So beyond what we can do as an organization to get the word out, it's any additional marketing and advertising is at the artist's expense and or artist's effort. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you much, but if you want to put together a postcard, or you want to just put together an e-postcard, or a poster, or any of that, as long as it includes the RNAC logo and it's been sent to me and then is approved by the director and Janice Brand, the president. She really likes to have her eyes on everything that goes out from the organization. But as long as you send it to us and we take a look at it and say, oh yeah, it's got everything you need, then, you know, it's great. And we'll help you circulate whatever you've created. And if, of course, you wanted to do an ad buy somewhere, that is totally your prerogative, but not necessarily required. And I don't think in this day and age, it's really necessary. I think there's a lot of ways to get the word out without having to buy ads. All right, so we talked a little bit about how the gallery is suited for virtually all media. And if you want a physical tour of the gallery, there is on the website a link to an older but very still accurate video tour of the gallery from 2 summers ago, where a show was hanging, and one of our members did a really nice walkthrough so you can actually see the space. But if you wanted to come physically see the space, you can either email me or you can email Tony, and we'll certainly get you into the space. And also, fortunately, last year, one of the someone who ran one of the shows actually made a map essentially and did this really great. So now we have a PDF that shows all the measurements of all the walls and everything that we can share with everyone. And that was very generous of her to do it and then to be able to share it with everybody. So that might help a little bit in planning how you would lay out a show. So now let's get to the application. So we've already reviewed that this all needs to be gathered up into a single PDF document. And you'll email it to me at rnacprograms@gmail.com with the heading Cove Gallery Proposal 2024. So you want to use images that are as clear as you can get them to demonstrate the work of the participating artists. And you can also attach separate larger image files if you want to the email, but they need to be in that document. And then, you know, we can use those other images as supplemental to really, you know, if you want to have us look closely at some detail or something that isn't going to sort of show up in the PDF. The submissions that are, any submissions that are incomplete, they don't have all the information, we're not going to review. Applications are going to be accepted through Monday, February 12th, so up to midnight on the 12th of February, which is a Monday. And then the committee, the jury will deliberate sometime in those next 2 weeks, but by the end of February 23rd, which is a week and a half later. And we'll send out notification very soon thereafter. That's a Friday, so it's possible you won't get word till Monday, but you know, somewhere right around the deadline. I mean, or the jury's deadline. You can always contact me or Tony to try, you know, if you have questions about planning the exhibition. Then here's these are the detailed dates. So I'm not going to go through those right now. You can look through, but as I said, there's 5 shows, 4 weeks each, beginning Memorial Day weekend and going through the 8th or 6th of October. And that again includes these turnover dates. So the application is pretty straightforward here. You know, we need, you know, the date you're submitting, the full name of the curator, or you can consider yourself the primary organizer. There needs to be one person so that we have one contact that we can kind of communicate through to all the people in the show. An email, of course, for the primary contact. A working title for the exhibition, which could change, you know, by the time you put the show on, but the title should suggest something about what the exhibition is actually going to be. And then the proposal description, we're saying between 300 and 500 words. That's actually like almost like a full page of writing. You don't have to. If you have a nice, clear, pithy description that you feel like really captures what you're talking about and it's 200 words, that's fine, you know. But we found that in the past, we gave people a really short window and then we didn't have enough information. So we're sort of like, okay, give us a little more. Successful proposals will bring together, and this is some of the subjective material here, is work of high artistic merit with clear and meaningful thematic and or aesthetic connection. This information should provide compelling language that might be used in a press release later on. So this is kind of, you could think of it as sort of the first draft of what later on would go into a press release. Of course, there'll be time to revise and edit and once the show is really coming together. We need information about each artist, so a CV or resume, a biography, a little short biography, and links to their website or Instagram pages if they don't have a website, but preferably at least having some kind of stable web presence would be really helpful so that we can look at the work. And we need representative images of each artist's work. And these don't have to be the exact work in the show, but it should help us understand the work that's being proposed for the exhibition in 2024. So especially if this is a thematic, or even if it's about an aesthetic pairing that you're trying to make, we need to be able to see the actual sort of work that would go into the show so that we can understand if it makes sense, you know, together, and that we can see the work together as a whole. And if your proposal, so this is one of the answers about, if your proposal includes fewer than 6 artists, then this is a new requirement. We want you to describe how you foresee covering gallery sitting, because that's a real concern. And in the past, I'm not saying this is why a proposal with one person or 2 people hasn't been accepted in the past, but it is a concern if we see a proposal come up that's like, it's 2 people. And we're like, okay, how is that going to work? And you know, the answer very, very well may be, we're 2 retired people and we have all the world, you know, time in the world, or we have an extensive family network, all of whom have agreed to, you know, sit 2 days out of the month or something like that. So there are very valid answers to that question if you're fewer than 6 artists. But we want to know what that is so we can kind of anticipate that in advance, that you've thought about it, you know, because that's something we can't, if your show is to be accepted and then you really can't handle the gallery sitting, it leaves everybody in a really big pickle. So that's a new question. I'm just going to take a look quickly at the new questions. Okay. Is it okay with RNAC if a specific artist appears in more than one show? No. Okay. Or is the intent to include as many individuals as possible? So certainly that's one of the aims, is to try to give as many artists, members, an opportunity to show in the gallery. And we did have that situation 2 years ago where someone was in 2 proposals and we had to ask them to choose, essentially, or ask the people organizing the shows to choose. And the person was in one show and not in the other. And it worked out fine because both shows had sort of more than 6 people, and so it was okay. Being notified at the end of February was a bit tight for me, perhaps just because of our theme, but is the reason it's so late? The reason is really just logistical, like getting, there's so much just going on here all the time that pulling together the jury earlier than this in the fall is just almost impossible. And we want to give people enough time to think about, to actually to conceive of a show and have time to pull it together and meet other artists and all that. So it just, I get what you're saying. I mean, I know, I think that by pushing the first show out till almost the end of May might help a little bit. I know what your show started in the middle of May, right? Or even earlier in May last year, maybe. Do you remember?
I think we gave up the first week. So
Okay.
it was May 21st, around there.
Oh, okay. So it was this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know it's pressure, but again, I mean, we can take proposals anytime. It's just.
Right, but you don't let us know until,
Oh, I see, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's okay. It's, I just wondered if, I understand you have a lot going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's just something to take on board. We'll talk about that this year. Is there a way we can do it a little earlier? I mean, literally the last co show ends in middle of October this year. And I don't know, there's just a lot going.
Yeah.
But I get the question, and I think it's something worth seeing if we can, excuse me, seeing if we can adapt the schedule a little better so gives people a little more time. Thanks for the question. So let's see. So let's get back to this question of what is, what are all these words mean? Thematic and aesthetic and high artistic merit. These are really subjective questions for sure. I'm gonna unshare my screen for a minute and I wondered, Cynthia, if I guess I'm going to talk just really briefly about sort of what some of the objective criteria are for looking at a proposal, and then we can talk more about these subjective criteria. So, there's really basic things like, did the proposal answer all the questions? Did they give us all the material we asked for? That is, and do we have enough information, enough images, et cetera, to actually make a decision? So it's about being mindful about giving us as much as you can. And again, this thing about the putting everything into a single document this year is so much about not only it's helpful for the jurors and the jury, but it also is in some ways a demonstration that you can pull off what it is you need to do when you're going to put on the exhibit. It's like, can you pull all this material together? Do you know what a large, what a large format image file is? Do you know how to put together a PDF? I mean, these are really simple things, but and I know it kind of is biased then towards people who have a lot of tech skills, and not a lot of tech skills, but some basic advanced computer skill. And I would say that if you are not that, to make sure you find, you hook up with some people who, at least one other person who really does have that skill set, I mean, we're not all designers, we're not all, but, and I don't think that these are really high level requirements, but I know it does bias the process toward people who kind of have some ability to pull together a digital packet, but then it is partly because that's what ends up happening when you're actually putting on the show. You got to put together a postcard, you got to get everything together for a press release, and I have to have high res images so that the newspaper will actually print them and all of that. So in some ways it's a little bit of a first round of can you do it, let's see, I'm just going to try to see here. I took a couple of notes. Yeah, I would just say try to join up not only with people who's artistic, with whom you are simpatico with artistically, but also, that you have kind of, maybe you balance out each other's skill sets, somebody's really organized and somebody's really got a great eye, all of that, for display. Obviously you're all artists, you have a great eye for work, but not everyone has the great, way to think about how do we lay this show out. And then there's this subjective quality, and I think, Cynthia, I'm gonna lean on you a little bit here too, to talk through some of this. When we talk about quality, we're, questions of is it well made? Is it interesting and original? Is it compelling to look at or think about? And not everything is beautiful, but everything has to have something that draws us in and makes us want to see more. Does it belong in a fine art context? That's one of the things about it. We're always on a line with the Cove Gallery, in that Mark Getteman's donation of the space essentially to us is done in the spirit of his parents, who are deceased, but who owned a gallery in that space for decades and had a very high standard of, they were really kind of dedicated to trying to lift the level of artistic expression on Rocky Neck and in Gloucester as a whole. And so we're trying to honor that as well. And so there is a kind of high standard. That's not to say that anything that might be considered craft work is not going to be looked at or accepted. I mean, I think the shows in the past few years have certainly demonstrated that. But if we see a show proposal that looks like this is a craft show, it's probably not gonna, in that sense of like, I think people know what I mean there. Maybe you don't. And if you don't, I can try to clarify, but just, but yeah, that there's the presumption is that it's kind of a fine art context in the Cove Gallery. And likewise, I mean, here's Cynthia, you might want to talk to, in the cultural center, there's also a real expectation that the standard of work, we're really like striving for this level of professionalism that we really have no business trying to achieve with so little money, people, paid staff, but we do. I think we pull it off pretty regularly. So I don't know, Cynthia, do you want to speak to that at all?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, number one, quality of a good proposal is the quality of the work, but that doesn't necessarily mean, as far as I'm concerned, professional work. There are a lot of amateurs that turn out some really fabulous work. To me, it's well-crafted work. It's thoughtful, it's intriguing, and it's well done. It's not just slap dab stuff. Let's see, what else to say about the quality of one thing for the cultural center is, we put a season together with, sometimes up to 8 shows. And what we hope for with a proposal is that the proposal will put in something really surprising and new too, that we don't, as a community of artists, see all the time. I think that, for me anyway, is helpful, where it's not work that we've seen a lot of. And I don't mean just the same artists, but, something that kind of pulls us away from our norm. That's a surprise to us. Does that answer the question? Yeah. I mean, and when it comes to themes, I think that it doesn't have to be some heavy, intense theme that I think is interesting necessarily. I mean, can be great if it's well thought through and the work really supports that theme. But also, formal connections between work, surprising, a surprising relationship between a painting and a sculptor, something that's simply fun to look at, and or shows you something new to think about.
Yeah, these are
Are
very
there more questions, or I don't know, I'm trying to.
No, I think that's,
Yeah, I mean, when we say it's subjective, it is, but we all agree, at least in our committee, that there has to be a cohesion to the show, that each work, if there's a theme, let's say if it's a formal connection between the work, they're all about line, for example. Well, okay, if they're all the work, is about line, does one, work, do they kind of flow together? A cohesive show that feels like it will you know, you picture it in your head in the space, and will it look good in this space? I mean, when we work on shows, other shows, it's not, we want the work that goes up on the wall to look the best that it possibly can. And that doesn't mean the work is good or bad. There's that qualifying thing. It's more about how does it speak with the other work? Am I making any sense? Okay.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I just want to clarify quickly, when I use the word professional, I meant that we strive to mount the shows in a professional manner, not that the work itself had to be created by, you know, people who are professional, you know, working artists who only make their living from art, or whatever, you know, that's just all I meant about that word in particular. Yeah, I think, you know, is there some, I like this, you know, this idea of like correspondence between the work, even if it's really different. Is there, you know, is there something that, and that's where, if it's really different, we're trying to come up with a language that explains to us how you understand these works to come, you know, to fit together is really helpful. You know, it is about the work itself, but that's where the statement can sometimes really help us go like, oh, I mean, I want to just call out for a moment, just Dale, she was the organizer of a show last year called Call and Response. And we read the, we read the proposal. At first, we were kind of like, I know what Call and Response is, and but then, you know, the more we read and the more we looked at the work and sort of her description of how each artist in the show is going to produce a work or has a piece that they've already produced. And then the other artists in the show were going to create and or choose work from their own body of work that responded directly to that work. And we were like, oh, that's an exciting, you're like, that has a great potential to have a really cool visual landscape for us, you know, and it did. I mean, I think it was a beautiful show. So, you know, that was one of those things that was very thematically really interesting, but also the images that were in the proposal really did sing together, you know, like, oh, we can see where these bodies of work would really complement but not be all the same. You know, that's another piece that, you know, is always you know, it's some fine balance between contrast and some kind of connection between the work. Oh, somebody asked a question about spoke about being mindful of the themes of the Cove and Cultural Center exhibition shows. And I would say, I mean, so right now we do have calls for work posted for all of the open call shows that are, do we have the whole calendar of shows posted on the exhibitions website? Do you know, Cynthia?
I don't think we do yet. No.
Okay.
I don't think next year's season has been published yet. No.
Okay, well, it's almost there. So I'll try to make sure that gets up in the next week or so. Because that, you know, that might be helpful to you. But where I was talking about that is more, I think, when the jury is looking at the work, to be like, oh, I mean, and I would say that's more, the awareness of that is more works in people's favor than sort of eliminates things in general, is sort of to think of, especially when it comes to Cove, is that we go, oh, well, we have that show going up in July about it's humor, you know, wouldn't that be great if that show is, this other show is up at Cove? Like that might be a really nice either counterpoint, or, you know, might fit together well, or, you know, so it's more just another little piece of information that we can bring into the whole, rather than it being something that would eliminate a show or would, you know, make it absolutely, you know, I mean, if the show doesn't have merit on its own, it's not going to be really served by what's going on at the cultural center. But the other way might be true, in that if it's a great proposal and there's something that also might determine which spot it gets put into. Although the proposals, obviously you get to choose your top 3 slots, and ultimately it just depends on if everybody picks the same 3 spots, then there's going to be 2 spots that we're going to have to fill with other show, so it's really, and then it becomes a conversation about, are you flexible? We'd love to have your show here, but this is the spot that's working, it's a little bit of a puzzle that has to get put together.
Can I just throw in something? Oh, thanks. One difference maybe between the cultural center proposals and Cove is that we encourage outside artists, if you will, to be part of proposed shows in at the cultural center. You have to have at least one member, but if you have a show of 4 people, you can be the member, and your other 3 counterparts can be non-members. Of course, if there's sales involved, as a non-member, you pay the 40% commission. But that's another way to bring in like kind of new life into the cultural center shows. Is there's a new new artists that people haven't seen.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Cynthia. And yeah, it's not only bringing in new work, but also those are potential new members as well, and and we try very hard with the exhibitions of the cultural center to do a firm balance between really supporting the membership and offering a number of shows in which they can participate, and having more open shows and a couple, 1 or 2 either proposals or an invitational show each year that has, it brings in another element, whether it's, again.
So we're in an hour. So I would love everybody to I'd like people to ask questions.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Because we have been talking for an hour. So do you guys have any specific questions that you'd like answered about proposals? Great. I will throw in too that we as a committee, the exhibitions committee, we have a pretty good a backlog, a resource for artists, and amongst the 8 of us, we know a lot of artists and are very aware of art in the area. So if you are looking to put together a show and looking for something, something, we're here, here to help. Just shoot us an email, and we can't design the show, but we could suggest artists.
That's a great point, and I think that's true even for Cove shows, right? Like you could, so the exhibitions email is rnac.exhibitions@gmail.com, and shoot us an email at that address. And if you're thinking about a Cove show, if we think of somebody that might fit into the grouping that you've started to form or whatever, then by all means we can.
It's what we like to do. So
like to look at art, think about art that goes together. Yeah, it's the fun part of it's the funnest part of this job, really.
Particularly artists that don't get seen very often. That's I really like to try to dig them up and get them on the wall. So more opportunity is better. And new connections between artists, that's always very gratifying.
Agreed. And I think we obviously there's a great value to having some of the Cove shows be partially formulated with people who have done it before, because they have the experience, and that actually really goes a long way. But we also really want to encourage people who have not done it before to apply, because this is your space as well. And so we again just try not to discourage anyone who has done it before to not apply. We love the work. It's just trying to open it up and keep the variety coming. And like Cynthia said, give people who haven't been showing another opportunity to show their work and for us to see it, all of us as a community. All right, thanks for everyone for coming. If I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I think we should probably wrap it up if we are over our hour.
Thanks. Totally
Thank
appreciated.
you.
Oh, good. I'm
Thanks,
glad.
thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
guys.
Coming,
Thanks
and
for
are
your
there any
input.
questions?
Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
All right.
Thanks, guys.
So long.
thanks.